Hey Computer, play About Bees podcast.
Hello, everybody. We're back again with another episode of About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity. This is Ron Miksha, and I'm with...
Bidzina Mosiashvili.
Can you say that name again?
Bidzina Mosiashvili, and today we're here to talk about dogs that detect bee diseases. Ron, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I could talk about it a little bit, but we have Roseanne sitting right here with us, and she's the expert. So we will be getting her to speak up about her work with rescue dogs. And these are dogs that haven't necessarily been rescued. These are dogs that do the rescuing for us. And Rose, you'll have to tell us your story. So how did you get started in what you're doing?
Well, I've always had an immense love for bees, wild bees, honeybees, everything like that. And I've always had a love for dogs. And it started when I was quite young. I remember watching dog training shows on TV and things like that. And the idea occurred to me that this was about 5 or 6 years ago, that dogs can detect pretty much anything, including disease in humans. Why could they not detect diseases in
Give us
bees?
an example. What do you mean dogs can detect diseases in humans? What is that? Like, how do they do that?
So dogs are used to detect cancers in humans, and they've shown up to 99% success rate
Wow.
with that detection. So what they'd have the dog do is walk around the human and detect where the cancer is. I believe they've also used dogs for tuberculosis and things like that. I know in Africa they're using pouched rats to detect the tuberculosis as well. So dogs have the best sense of smell that we know of pretty much anything we have access to that's domesticated.
Would you happen to know the ranking of the different species of dogs that have the best sense of smell?
So the hound group as a whole, the scent hounds have the best sense of smell, and the bloodhound ranks as the top currently.
The bloodhound, okay.
Yeah, the bloodhound. Very ancient, not super ancient, but one of the older breeds. They're a foundation breed for a lot of hunting dogs and other hounds and retrievers and things like that.
So you heard about this, but you were already interested in. I've sensed that you've had a long affinity for different kinds of animals. Like you're friends with a lot of different creatures.
I currently keep tarantulas, dart frogs, tree frogs. I have 2 finches, and then I have Molly, who started the journey with the scent detection. And I have a tiny chihuahua named Tiny, who's about 3 pounds, who I've tried to train to do things and just looks at me and says, "Hey, man, just give me a blanket and a cozy spot."
Oh, yeah.
I hope everyone can excuse some of the background noises. There's some construction happening in the back, and yeah, we're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's.
I don't think it's being picked up.
Well, I can hear it in my headset, so probably it is, but we won't worry
Very
too much
subtle,
about
though,
it because
but
I
yeah.
think we're louder than the hammering.
Okay.
But we're in Calgary. You should mention that. Now, I didn't say that at the beginning. I should have. That we're here in my backyard near the center of Calgary, actually, not too far from the center, downtown. And usually it's a nice, quiet deck out here, all nice and easy going. But today, of all days, the neighbors decided it was time to build a new house or
Right.
put up a deck.
It's Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to happen. Anyway, we do have a beautiful day. We were cooking in 35-degree temperatures, which is roughly 95 or so Fahrenheit. And
That's hot.
It was so hot. And today, it's just so pleasant. It's right
is.
around perfect temperature.
It's kind of cold this morning.
Nah, we're just not used to it being
Yeah, it was
normal.
a very extreme change, though.
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
Very wild
Yes.
swing.
Yeah.
It was 17 the other day.
Yes.
And we found that the bumblebees were out fanning the nests on the hot days, and then I checked in on a couple of the rescues, and they were inside the nest trying to keep warm. So
Oh,
I wonder
okay.
what they think of this weather.
Well, we should ask them, or we'll ask you because you're the expert, and we do want to get back on topic here. We apologize for the background noise. Thanks, Betsina, for pointing that out.
I don't know. It got a little bit noisy. It was quiet earlier. And
yeah,
then, they
yeah,
picked
but
up
see,
again.
people would have totally ignored it. They wouldn't have heard it at all. But now that it's been mentioned, they're going to be listening for it throughout the whole podcast.
Well, if they hear stuff like that, it's just that's what it is.
That's what it is. It's not my stomach gurgling.
Yeah.
So
I
we're
didn't
here.
mess up the audio.
We're here with Rose. Rose, how do you say your last name?
Bouffard.
Bouffard. Okay.
Bouffard.
That almost sounds
Like
a little
boo.
bit French.
French Canadian.
Oh.
My family is French Canadian, Quebecois. We were one of the early families to arrive in New France. My great grandfather Napoleon actually was his name. Interestingly enough,
Napoleon Bonaparte?
came in.
Or
No,
Dynamite?
you
Or-
know, we never know. We never know. Sometimes
Mhm.
the ancestry and genealogy. But
No.
no, it was Napoleon
Yeah,
Bouffard.
Napoleon was kind of a wild one anyway. So,
Yeah.
so this great grandparent of yours was Napoleon Bouffard.
Napoleon Bouffard. Oui,
Bouffard.
Oui.
Bouffard.
Bouffard.
I'll never. I can't. I have so much trouble with even names like Smith and Jones. They don't seem to come out right.
Well, how do you say your last name?
Oh man, don't ask me.
I bet if we dig through Napoleon's history, he's probably a beekeeper somewhere there.
I'll bet you have beekeepers in your background.
I wouldn't doubt it. They were, I believe they were merchants before they came here. I think it was late 1700s. So they could have been in sorts of, into all sorts of things. I do know they were bourgeoisie a little bit, but actually when I did some reading on my history, there was a lot of volunteering they were doing and providing homes to homeless people back
Oh
then
wow!
and things
Even
like
though
that.
they were bourgeoisie, they were still helping the proletariat class.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I'd have to
I know
read
why.
back,
I
but-
know why. Like anytime rich people are helping the poor people, it's to keep the poor people from rising up and having a revolution.
There you
So that's
go.
what was
Well,
going
that's
on
what
They
there.
were
they
petit.
want.
They were
That's-
called petit bourgeoisie, so they weren't rich.
Okay, they
but,
were the petit,
they
the petit ones, the
definitely-
small ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. We are on a podcast called About Bees, and but we've kind of strayed into the culture and curiosity part of our podcast.
Yeah.
Let's get
Too
back on
quick.
topic again. We do this a lot, Rose. So
all
just
good.
be patient with us, and we know that our audience does its best to be patient because they never know what we're going to talk about next, and it might be something they're actually interested in.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. We got a little wasp, or what is that?
Yeah, look how
You gotta-
calm she is. You're just so. That was a wasp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would garden with my wasps when I lived in Mackenzie Town. So wasps and Hymenoptera in general, they have extremely good memories. So I would garden with my wasps. Sometimes they would land on my shoulder, and I would just be gardening. And what they were waiting for was me to rustle up some aphids or whatever they were hunting for
yeah.
that day. And I would cup them in the house, and I would release them outside, and I never had problems with them.
Huh.
The only time I got stung by a wasp was when I accidentally grabbed one when it was underneath a pile of
Yeah.
a bag of dirt. I think they're severely misunderstood. And I like to believe they just remembered me because I never hurt them.
That's probably true. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to question anything because I try to have an open mind and.
I'm gonna just adjust the tripod. Yeah,
More
you guys
stable.
can continue talking and.
Okay, so while the cameraman, Bidzina, is adjusting things, let's get back on topic. What we're looking at right now, for those of you who are watching, you see a picture of Rose. Rose, what are you doing in this photograph?
Okay, in this photograph, me and a volunteer had just finished up digging up this, I believe it was a Bombus huntii nest. It could have been centralis, I'm not sure. My memory's not the greatest. So we had dug it up, and I had placed the nest. So basically what I'm looking for in these cases is I'm looking for larval cells, and I'm looking for a queen. So I had found both. I had placed them in the box with some raw organic cotton, place them in the box, put some cotton over top. And what I'm waiting for here is I'm waiting for the bees to come back. So when I am at this stage, I will place the lid back on, and I will leave, and I'll come back in the evening, because then all the workers are home. So your success rate is a lot higher when you do that. So here I'm just crouching next to this nest that I just dug up and placed in the box. And this was actually an angry nest too.
Yeah. Oh,
Not happy.
they can be, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like bumblebees tend to be so docile when they're working flowers.
Yeah.
But when we dig up their nests or open their nest, I had to do that with my research work, and they would just come darting up into my face.
Yep. They go right for your face because they know the chemical signature of your breath.
Mm.
So that's why they go for the eyes.
I try
And
to
mouth.
brush regularly, brush my teeth, but they still go for
Yeah.
them.
Same.
carbon monoxide or whatever, right?
There's several scent signals, I believe, that they go for. So that's why when you see a bear going after a nest or any animal, they're always going for the eyes and
Mm.
mouth.
Okay, so we give ourselves away. So, okay, in this photograph, then, you are kneeling on the ground. You have a white suit on. That looks like a beekeeper's suit.
That is my beekeeper's suit. So I have found that the classic honeybee keeper suit works very well with bumblebees.
Yes.
So I have it here with me, actually.
So less of your body is exposed for stinging.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
I find
did you change it? It's the same picture there.
That's right. It's the same picture.
Oh, oh, she's wearing the beekeeping suit. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's just a classic beekeeper's outfit. So you would wear this with a hat because you don't want the netting right on your face or your head because you can get stung. So that's what that is. And then it's a size too big for me so that I can wear as many or as little clothes as I need underneath. And I find that the bumblebees are a lot more aggressive than... I don't like to use the word aggressive. I mean to say defensive. They only ever act in defense. They're a lot more defensive than honeybees. I can go into a honeybee nest and pick up the slats,
Yeah, the frames. You can
the
pull them
frames
out.
with covered in bees and not
Right.
have an issue. I've even pet them and
Honeybees, you're saying?
honeybees. Yeah,
Okay.
I've even pet them.
Right.
There's a farm. It's called Highfield. I believe it's called Highfield Regenerator Farm. Yeah.
Okay.
And those are some of the most gentle bees I've ever seen. I did a workshop there once, and
So my bees, my honeybees, I bought from it's like from a pretty much store bought. They're like the queens and whatnot, and they're slightly more aggressive. I don't know if that's because they're more in a rural area and they're not used to humans, but my friends' honeybees, they all came from a local breeder in Calgary that's been breeding his own batch of bees for over 5 or 6 years now, and he gave us 3 of his lines, and they're so friendly.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, and breeding has really got something to do with it, but yeah, I don't know, just it's very interesting when you come across that.
genetics are huge, and it applies to honeybees. They say that Italian bees are the most docile, and then
Right.
the Russian bees are a bit more aggressive, and then the Australian bees are like their own thing as well.
But you can buy an aggressive beehive and then eventually breed out the aggression.
Well, you'd have to, I believe, Ron, please correct me, you remove the queen in those cases and introduce a new one?
You try to. That's usually the best recourse, is to requeen the colony. So, and sometimes, surprisingly, as soon as you get rid of the old queen, within days, the colony will settle down, even though they still have the same genetics.
Right.
You know, the daughters of that angry queen are still there.
Yeah.
And then eventually the new queen hopefully has a better, more, a tamer kind
So
of
if you
attitude.
do it
but
over
sometimes,
and over again,
well, even if you do it just the once,
yeah.
a lot of beekeepers will report that just getting rid of that
Angry
old
queen.
queen
Yeah.
seems to just change the disposition of the
Of
entire hive.
the
although,
yard.
although for sure, after 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to have a new batch of bees coming out,
Yeah.
and those bees should be gentler because of having the different mother. Yeah, yeah. But we're talking about the bumblebees now, and
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
I've had the same experience with bumblebees where I've opened up the boxes, and you have a box here too. Do you want to show us what we're
Yeah,
talking about when we
sure.
talk about a bumblebee box?
So this is a classic bumblebee box that I use in relocations. As you can see, there's the hole, just a simple hinge lid, and it's filled with organic raw cotton.
So the cotton inside is what the bumblebee queen will live in, and she'll
Yep.
burrow down inside and make her nest.
Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
bumblebee queens like a variety of things. They'll take over mouse nests. They love mouse material and things like that, and they'll bring in some of their own as well. I have seen them nest with straw or dry grass and garbage. Actually, the nest pictured here had quite a bit of garbage
Okay, why
in
don't I
it.
move on ahead? And yeah, oh, that's something else too. Correct me on this, but if I look at a honeybee hive and then look at a bumblebee hive, a nest, the honeybee hive seems so clean and orderly, and the bumblebees look like they're just like the wild cousins from the Appalachian Mountains or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So
You
on
got
this,
some
Or-
wild cousins from the Appalachian
Yeah,
Mountains?
I do, and I was going to say Rose's wild cousins back in New France.
New France, New Orleans, there's probably some. for
Yeah,
sure. Sorry,
okay.
Nolans. I was gonna say it.
Narlands, down in Narlands. Okay, so yeah, we are looking at a picture of the inside of a bumblebee nest, and that bumblebee nest does show a lot of untidiness, just bits of dirt and seeds and grass.
Do you
and
know what time of year?
this one would have been around the 1st of August.
Okay, so I can see immediately that this nest is further along and probably closer to being done. They do look like this later in the season.
Right.
Towards like right now, when I've done my rescues, they've actually looked quite clean and tidy.
Okay.
But it looks like quite a few bees have hatched and things like
Yeah.
that. The cleanup crew probably isn't
So
as
can
large.
can you kind of explain that? So the bumblebee is solitary, but it will hatch a bunch of worker bumblebees, daughter bees that work
So-
for her, or
So bumblebees are one of the few nesting bees. They're like honeybees.
Yeah, they're social.
They're
not
they're
solitary.
social. Yeah, they're not
Bumblebees-
solitary. There's actually
Oh.
more solitary bees than there are social bees.
Oh,
and
sorry.
bumblebees happen to be one of them. But their nests aren't nearly as extensive. You'll maximum get a few hundred, maybe. That's pushing it.
Mhm.
Whereas honeybees, you'll see thousands upon thousands, right? So a lot of people make that.
so which one are the Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. A lot of people.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few solitary bees here. We have the sweat bees, leafcutter bees, the mining bees, the andrena. Those are the orange ones that people always get confused about in the spring. What is this? What is this? Like they get some new creature from somewhere. It's like, no, it's just the andrena. They live for a few weeks and they go back to
And
sleep.
how do the solitary bees live? Do they?
So some will actually live in what I like to call towns. So they're solitary, meaning they take care of their own larvae, like they make the little pods and things like that. But they like to be in a community with other bees, because oftentimes if there's other bees in the area and nesting in the area, it's probably quite attractive. So they will do that, but they're not really helping each other like social bees would.
That's right. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
So
And-
that's what they mean by solitary, not that they live by themselves.
well, they can also do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, they can be totally independent. But what I think Rose is describing is familiar to us with the leafcutter bees,
Leafcutter bees, right.
where they have their little round chambers and they live near each other, but they certainly don't help each other.
Mhm.
Probably the only things, just like you said, something I really hadn't thought about, is that if they are established, then it's probably a good location as far as wind and shelter from rain
Oh,
and
I
so on.
see.
So others will, and then also they have safety in numbers.
Safety in numbers, right?
So
Mhm.
if a bird comes through, it doesn't wipe out everybody. All like
Mhm.
there's some that are going to survive.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's evolutionarily And it's probably a step on the way to becoming social. I believe it is. I think I read that somewhere.
So one mason bee will fly to an area because it's good, and others will come to it with the same reason, and then the original bee is not going to kick them out because why not? I'll have some friends.
There's no reason for them to fight. They're not competing.
Right,
They'll have their chamber
Yeah.
where they'll place the cells.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so digger bees are actually famous for these communities.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you'll walk down, especially, I believe it's in the States, the South, I think, or Midwest or
some of
something.
the sandy areas.
You'll be walking around like a dirt road or something, and you'll see just a line, and they're almost perfectly spaced sometimes, and those are just the little digger bees. It's quite cute. They're probably the cutest bees.
Yeah, bees are kind of. I always find them, insects to be very aggressive looking and kind of scary. But bumblebees are not, for some reason.
They just look like bumbling, happy, plump little guys. They just kind of float around.
Their way of
around.
flight is not as aggressive.
Right.
Yeah, something about.
Well, actually, they don't fly. They've figured out scientifically that bumblebees aren't able to fly because their wings are too small and their bodies are too heavy.
Yeah, the physics doesn't make sense.
Doesn't
So
make sense.
what are they doing?
It's an illusion. It's an optical illusion.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're like floating.
They're kind of like floating.
So they get height.
if
They're
you-
filled with helium.
Yeah, they're filled with helium, and they just kind of bob around like that. Yeah.
Oh, are you serious?
No, not at all. I want to talk.
They're like
we are
chickens.
definitely going to be talking about the dogs. I mean, that was our main theme here. But before we move on from our pictures of the bumblebees, I do want to ask you a little bit about what it's like to do a rescue. So can you walk us through the stages? You get a phone call.
I get a phone call, I get an email, I get a text, I get a referral.
Is it an emergency? You ever get an emergency alert, like how we get one when there's like a
I don't know if it's an emergency alert. To me, it is sometimes like the one I did recently last week was Bombus nevadensis. So the flying pandas, I call them. Actually, a lot of people call them that because they're huge. They fly around. They're really cute. They sound like a tiny helicopter flying by your ear, you know.
What did you say? Sorry, what would you say?
They sound like a tiny
But
helicopter.
what's the name of the?
Bombus nevadensis.
And
So the common name is Nevada bumblebee.
They're here in
They're
Alberta?
the biggest species we have in Alberta of bumblebee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was called by this guy named Booty, and he was very concerned about these bees. He's like, they're tearing down this garage tomorrow, and I really just I want to save these bees. I love hearing that. I just love hearing it. And he said they're in the wall. I'm like, perfect. It'll be easy. So I got the call, and I went there the same day, a couple hours later, because I was just finishing up some stuff. And there they were on the outside of their home in this wall in this garage, and you could see a couple, 2 or 3 fanning the nest, cooling it down. I was like, oh, this will be easy. So I stuffed the bees back into the hole, and I put some cotton over it because I wanted to get as many bees as possible. And then I went into the garage, and luckily they just had the insulation and the plastic barrier, so it was
good.
easy.
So you didn't have to pull away any wall.
Drywall.
No, a lot of
Drywall,
people want me to
anything.
undo and rebuild their decks.
Oh.
I have a call about that right now, and I'm like, well, you're going to be paying by the hour, I think.
You're gonna redo the deck as well?
Yeah, it looks
gets-
like.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But with this one, so yeah, it was easy. I just cut away the vapor barrier, cut away the insulation. And these bees were happy in this pink insulation that we use. And this has happened a couple times. And so I cut away the insulation. I checked that I had the queen and the nest, and that the cells looked healthy, and it was worth, doing what I was doing. And yeah, I just cut the insulation to, I used a slightly bigger box because these are Nevada bumblebees, and stuffed them in there, insulation, everything. I took the cotton out. I was like, yeah, they don't care about that. And yeah, and then I called my friend Blake McNeil. He runs Alberta Native Plant Rescue, and he was willing to have these girls in his backyard, and they've been doing great ever since.
Oh, that's really good.
Wow.
You're really good at what you do because I have tried to transplant bumblebees, and my success rate is not very good.
Oh,
Oh,
I wonder why that is.
well, it's me, I guess. But people I've talked to, they say that it's really hard to transplant bumblebees. That they often will kill the queen.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what a lot of people do? And this one guy is scared the bejesus out of me. He vacuumed them up. He would vacuum them up, stuff them in a box, and put them in the woods. And then
He did it himself.
He did it himself.
Like he
used
has
a
no
shop
beekeeping.
vac.
Okay, yeah, no beekeeping experience.
I believe he was a beekeeper
Oh,
as
he was a
well.
beekeeper, okay.
And he would shop back, and I'm like, I don't understand
Yeah.
how these are surviving at all. But he wouldn't like elaborate on it. So that was scary. A lot of people do that. But the key.
He was a rescuer himself.
He called himself one. Yeah.
Oh, and that was his method of rescuing.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And quite a few beekeepers, honey beekeepers, will do that because their goal isn't to relocate the bees like yours was. Their goal was to rid themselves of the bumblebees because they believe bumblebees are competition.
No.
Which is
no.
sad, but
That is sad because for one thing, in our area here in Alberta, it's absolutely it's seldom, if ever, true because bumblebees work a different classification of flowers than our honeybees do.
yeah.
Our honeybees will work the canola, the big fields. They fly away from the hive a long distance because scout bees say go way over here, and bumblebees kind of bumble around the backyard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honeybees don't. So there's a very little competition between them.
Yeah, the bumblebees are really looking for native flowers.
Yes.
And actually, they do like quite a few cultivars. Like they really like the hollyhock and things like that. The globe thistles that they.
Spirea, though,
Yeah,
I think
those things.
that's native, though, I think.
Yeah.
But
Apple trees. Oh my God, bumblebees will actually pound for pound pollinate more than a honeybee. Not to knock honeybees. I love honeybees, but
And they use bumblebees to pollinate greenhouses, right?
Yeah, they
because
do.
honeybees can't
Yeah,
because of the
there's-
way they see.
there's a
That's
huge
right.
company in the States that does that. They ship you a box of Eastern bumblebees, and you just put it in your greenhouse. And
Can you kind of talk about their vision a little bit and why the honeybee can see what's the difference in their vision and why they can't pollinate? Because I heard it has something to do with the light. I don't know exactly, and the bumblebees see differently.
It's not so much the sight, it's more what they kind of get the most reward. So bees are actually highly trainable for an insect, and it's the work reward.
Okay.
If something's more rewarding, then that's what they'll do. Honeybees are European, right? That's where they started, I believe.
Yeah, and North Africa, part of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're more used to cultivated crops. They're more flexible, things like that. Bumblebees will also pollinate cultivated crops, but it's not so much a sight thing as it is more like
Sorry,
what
I
is
mean,
more rewarding.
I mean like the greenhouse thing because they said that they can't use honeybees. They
There's
have
a
to use-
different reason.
There's a different reason.
Yeah,
Okay.
the main reason they don't use honeybees inside of a greenhouse is because the honeybees have a social structure that has scout bees go out and look for potential sources and then flies back and tells the other bees that there is, 100 hectares
Right.
of the same kind of flower blooming in the same spot.
Yeah.
And these bees, the honeybees, their tendency is to fly kilometers, and the greenhouses just aren't that big. And the bumblebees have a really different way of performing, and that is that they fly usually less than a couple hundred meters, so they don't go very far, and some greenhouses are about the size of a bumblebee's range.
Okay. I
And
see.
also the bumblebees, they don't tell each other what kind of flower to go after. They just go out, every one on its own, and figures out what to do. And they will learn a route and tend to go to that same route over and over again because they got comfortable with,
Yeah.
fly out of the nest and turn right and then go so far and turn left and pick on each flower as you go. And so they're much more adapted
Okay.
to the situation.
I see. That makes sense.
I believe honeybees are actually the only bee that do a dance to communicate locations of different things. I think also the problem with bee is there's not enough forage in a greenhouse for thousands and thousands of honeybees.
That would be true, but seriously, the people who own the greenhouses and sometimes the people who own the bees wouldn't really care. They would supplement the feed for the honeybees to keep them alive, and they would just say, "Oh, great! There are way too many bees. That means I'm going to get maximum pollination." If it worked, but it doesn't work. In the open fields, they often do that. If you have a place where there are a lot of blueberries, then you'll often find that they'll put in 10 times as many bees as can get food off the blueberries.
Mm-hmm.
And the bees suffer a bit at that time, but they do a really, really thorough job of pollinating because they're desperate for food.
Mm-hmm.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So anyhow,
nice.
we still haven't finished this rescue. Where we
Yeah.
are now is you got notified that these were the big Bombus Nevada. How do you say it? Nevadas?
Nevadensis.
Nevadensis?
Nevadensis. Yeah.
No, never mind. I can never say words I've never seen before. And the result of it was that you went to this garage that was going to be demolished,
Mm-hmm.
and you found the nest behind plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use a bee smoker?
No, bee smoker isn't very useful with bumblebees.
That's what I understand too.
Yeah, whereas honeybees will calm down, bumblebees would get more excited
Okay.
because there's fire. Like, what are we gonna do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And you picked them up and you kept this, shall we say, carcinogenic pink fiberglass insulation
Yeah.
for these bees to live
That's
in.
what the bees like.
Yeah.
You gotta go with that.
And it went into a bigger box than the one you just showed us.
Yeah.
So it's in something probably the size
About
of a shoebox or something.
1.5 feet, 2 feet.
Okay.
And then like a foot,
Yeah.
foot wide.
And how long ago was that?
That was last Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they've had roughly a week.
Yep.
And as far as you know, they have settled in at the... Yep. Oh,
We
that's
can see
great.
them foraging, and
mhm.
there's been activity like when it was hot, they were still fanning it and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it looks good so far. I usually wait a couple weeks before I declare anything a success, but yeah, they're doing okay so far.
So these were in the side of a building. They weren't under the ground. There are different species of bumblebees. I think we have like 15 or 16 species of bumblebees just here in Calgary.
Yeah.
And some of them nest kind of up in the air a bit, and some go underground to nest.
Yeah.
And the ones, we're looking at a couple of pictures right now. A photograph that I took of a ground nesting bumblebee, and then a photograph that Rose took. And it is, this is one of your relocations.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the same as in
That
the
was
previous,
the
yeah.
earlier photograph that is just kind of close up on the box. And we can see the non-carcinogenic natural cotton.
Yes.
And that's where you have moved these bees into, so you can relocate them.
Yeah. So the reason I was able to use the cotton on this nest is because the original nest was kind of just loose, and it was garbage and a bit of straw, like it was an old mouse nest. So it was
Okay.
much easier to scoop up the cells and queen. So the queen often won't flee the nest
Yeah.
cells.
Yeah.
She'll stay right there. So if you make sure you have the queen and you have healthy cells or pods, or whatever you like to call them, then you're good.
Okay.
So is this bee, does it also, you remember you were mentioning how you have to strategically set up multiple nests in your house if you want to attract bumblebees, because they like to go from nest to nest?
No, that's not quite it. The reason you might put multiple boxes, and yes, they do look very much like the wooden box with a lid on it and
Yeah.
some felt on the inside. The reason we put up multiple ones is to try to beat the statistical odds.
Okay.
Because in general, here in our area in Calgary, we only have about 20 to 25% of empty boxes will get a nest
Oh, I
built
see.
in it over the summer. So, you might just happen to be in an area where there just are very few bumblebees.
Yeah.
And then your odds are even worse, or you might be in an area that has a few more, so maybe it's 50-50, but nevertheless, not every box gets filled.
Right.
And when I was doing my research on the bumblebees, I put 2 in every participant's backyard. We
Yeah.
had 75 people who wanted bumblebee nests in their backyard, so we put out 150 boxes. And out of those 150, we had about 35 that had, occupants in it. So that's just a little over a quarter of them. Yep.
These bumblebees, do they do the same thing?
The ground nesting ones?
This one here that we're looking at,
Well, this
or
is
they go back to their hive every year?
no. They do you want to talk about their life cycle?
Sure, I can talk about it for
You're
sure.
here. You're the expert.
So what happens is when they leave the nest, and they don't leave the nest in the fall. They die. The queens and drones are gone, are doing their thing, and it becomes a mess. It's just full of like little worms. I think they're moth
they're
worms,
waxworms. Mhm.
things like that, fungus, mold. There's no incentive for the bumblebee to return to that nest. Now they might return to a similar location,
Oh, I see. Okay.
but they will not return to an old nest. It's too much of a mess. It's
So
a
they're-
disaster. They'll get diseases.
So rather than cleaning out the original nest, that it's more work than it's better to just go make a new one
Yeah.
For the people or for the bee?
for the nest for
Oh, yeah.
for the bumblebee. It's easier for them to make a new beehive than to reuse the old one.
And oftentimes, skunks, largely skunks and things like that, bears, not in the city, obviously. Well, maybe in the city. We have bears in
we
the
do
city.
have a few.
They'll eat these.
They'll
The
clean it
same
up.
year.
They usually like to eat the larva and things like that, but
And the pink insulation.
and the pink insulation, and
The
They'll
bees
just
like it
destroy
for
'em.
some reason.
they do love insulation. It
Fiberglass
worries me. I wish they wouldn't
Yeah.
like it, but
Yeah,
'Cause,
it's
yeah,
not good
lo-
for you to handle.
Yeah, a lot of your recoveries are with insulation.
I've had a few, two or three, and
They're like old, probably
ju-
old insulation too, molded. Whatever.
the one I did recently was brand new insulation.
Okay.
I had a Bombus perplexus nest that was rather old insulation, so it had broken down. It was into clumps and things like that. They just love it. I found them in blankets. Someone had a blanket in their shed, and the bees found a hole. Usually bees are lazy. They'll try to find a hole that exists already. So maybe a mouse was in that blanket already, but nevertheless there was a hole. So I found them in blankets. Old, like mouse nests that were just under a floor. They love the floors of sheds and things like that because a lot
Right.
of mice and vole and things like that.
Mhm.
Like they build it, and then the queen bee can fight off. The queen in the spring can fight off a mouse or a vole. So
A bumblebee. Yeah,
A
I've,
bumblebee.
yeah, that's right. I've seen videos of them kind of getting in, scrapping it on. And
And I guess that's why they're so aggressive when we open up a box,
Yeah.
because they don't know what we're going to be doing to them. All right, so we're looking at some bumblebees, that have nested into the ground, and there are others in our same city around here that nest higher up. And basically there's a difference between the species. Some species prefer ground, some just prefer to be a little bit elevated. But regardless of where they are, you're finding them and you're rescuing them because of either people calling or because you have worked out a system of training a dog to sniff out the location of wild bumblebees.
yes.
And I understand that your project or your goal at one time was that if somebody was going to be developing a piece of like a lot inside the city, They don't want to destroy what's already living there, especially if it's bumblebees or bees of any sort. So your work involved then being able to train a dog or dogs, plural, and they can find these live nests, and then you could rescue them, even if somebody doesn't call you.
Yeah, so what I wanted to end up doing was working with the University of Calgary and University of Alberta, so that first I wanted to be able to flag where these nests were, so farmers and things like that wouldn't, rustle them up, things like that, so they'd be left alone. New developments, find the bees in there and things like that. But I ran into a wall with that a bit because they were saying the ASPCA or some animal rights thing of Canada or something. I can't remember exactly. But the university wasn't getting the okay to work with dogs and bees because they were worried the dogs would get stung. Now, in my experience, the few times I have used the dogs to find bees, the bees don't bother the dog. And the dog can smell at such a distance that they wouldn't even need to get that close to the nest. And usually, bumblebees are more of, they prefer to warn rather than attack.
I don't want to, my bees attacked my dogs. They got really curious, and they went right up in the entrance, and they got stung.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll happen with dogs, yeah. So like I mentioned before, bees do have quite good memories. And I'll tell you a story about this one nest. So that nest we were looking at before, so they were kind of aggressive. But it was hot. I could understand. It was a large group. They remembered my face even a few days later. There was this one bee in particular.
Face or your ferret?
They remembered. They actually can remember. They've done studies where they found that bumblebees can remember faces.
Bumblebees. Okay.
Yeah, they've done tests on this.
I've heard that. Yes.
And this, of course, I could just be like adding human qualities to bees, but I see why not in this case.
Go for it.
This one bee would come out and look for me, and she would come up and do the kind of just look at me and warn me off because I placed the nest. So this is a ground nest I found, so I placed them on the ground with a heavy rock on the lid to keep the skunks and things out. But she would come and she would look at me. She was threatening. So one day I was like, she's not going to do anything. I was just sitting on my rocking chair in the backyard reading a book, and she went thunk right in the middle of my forehead. And I knew it was the same bee. I knew it was the same one because, like we mentioned earlier, bees don't have a way really to communicate.
So did you get stung
with each other? I got stung right in the middle of my forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I actually laughed.
Maybe she's saying hello.
No, she was like, "Oh, it's that person again."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know what they did, and she just decided. I'm just glad that when bumblebees sting, they don't die like honeybees. Yeah. But I thought it was hilarious. I was like, you know what? I deserve that.
Did it hurt? How was the bumblebee sting compared to a bee sting?
Schmidt did a pain index, and I believe bumblebees are higher than honeybees.
Right.
And they can sting multiple times, and they will. So when I'm working on a bumblebee nest, they'll be right in my face, and they just sting multiple times, and they're right in my face.
Well, you'll get stung you've been stung multiple, like, other occasions from bumblebees?
I haven't been stung that often.
Okay.
I have a friend who literally every time he works with his bees gets stung. And he's wearing a suit too, and I'm like...
And no reaction.
And I can walk right up to a honeybee hive, the same hive, and not have any issues. But I control my breath. I control my movements.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I go into a meditative state when I'm working with bees because they do react to what you're doing.
Have you ever had any sort of allergic reactions?
No.
Like swelling or...
No, it itches for a couple days.
It just stings. It just hurts?
It stings and then it itches.
Okay.
Yep.
Weird story. I actually use Preparation H on stings. I find it pulls the inflammation out really good.
I don't know what Preparation H is.
Okay.
Ron, do you want to take this one?
No, I don't. Okay, so let's move on, though. I mean, that's a nice segue into talking about training a dog.
Yeah. So dogs are really great, and we developed them over thousands of years to have an amazing sense of smell.
Yeah.
And
I mean, wolves itself, right? Before we even came, they were so.
they can track over
yeah.
kilometers,
Yeah.
from the air. They've done so many tests with dogs doing human tracking, and it's incredible. You can cross a river, you will never, almost never, I should say, escape a dog. So, for example, I have a couple notes here about facts. So, humans have about 5 million scent receptors in their nose, right? We can smell if there's a
That
fire
sounds like
nearby.
plenty. 5 million
Yeah.
sounds like a lot.
It
Sounds like
is a lot.
Yeah.
I would. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But dogs have 300 million scent receptors in their nose, and the reason they have that is because they have these structures in their nose. So we have them too, and it's like this kind of folded labyrinth in there, and they have many, 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 many times more than we do.
And they have bigger noses.
And they have bigger. They have
Yeah, that
that
makes
big,
sense.
long
Yeah.
nose. So yeah, they have these things. They're called turbinates, I believe. I'm so bad at remembering specific terms, and so it allows for more scent receptors to live on the surface. And then dogs also have a fantastic filing and memory system for scent. So imagine our greatest computer. A dog's sense of smell memorization and things like that, it's much higher. They're actually trying to replicate it with robots. I don't know how far they've gotten by now. They said they're close, but
So these are robots with really big noses.
huge noses.
Huge noses.
Huge noses.
It's funny that you say that, actually. And there's a show, Futurama.
Mhm.
Do you guys know Futurama?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cartoon anime about the future, 1,000 years from now, actually. So they're 3010 or something like that, or 3020. So anyways, the professor there, that's all sorts of crazy inventions. One of his inventions is
The smelloscope. I remember that. So he could smell in space or something.
And he can he uses it to smell. He can detect things way further than the one, and he detects.
And he
meteors.
sticks the things right up his. Oh, it's just
Oh, boy.
gross.
Okay.
So maybe you're onto something.
Maybe they are, but
Your dog has 300 million
yeah.
scent detectors in its
Scent
nose,
receptors. Yeah.
receptors, and those then can be trained, or the dog's brain is trained.
The dog memorizes, files, smell what it means. The dog knows how old a scent is, how young
old
a
it
scent
is?
is. Yeah, how young the scent is.
Yeah.
They can smell particles on moving water. So a dog, say you have 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. If you drop a teaspoon of sugar, the dog can find that. So they're used in a lot of water retrieves for people who've passed away and things like that. And because they have so many scent receptors, they have 40 times more brain power dedicated to sniffing than humans do.
Okay.
And they can differentiate 30,000 to 100,000 different smells.
Oh my goodness.
So do they also have memory and smell? So if do dogs pick up, like, hey, this smell was here 2 weeks ago. There was a deer there was like, do they know when this thing?
Yeah. So in Alberta, for that reason, one of the reasons, they've actually banned use of dogs in any kind of tracking hunting. I think they still allow for cougar or something like that, but deer and things like that, because they're too successful. Like you would eliminate the population if you allow dogs to track. But then some people say, well, if I hit a deer and it's bleeding out, we would want to find it faster. So there's so there's a bad thing. Like, we don't want dogs hunting everything. And
I've seen these
stuff like
videos
that,
of
but-
these, like, they have these packs of 40 dogs where they hunt mountain lions.
Yeah, so that's often like foxhound, coonhound are used for predator a lot. Bloodhounds sometimes. And they'll often mix breeds they're still mixing dogs to get a specific desired effect and scent prowess. But usually it's coonhounds hunting predator and stuff, which I don't agree with. I don't like predator hunting whatsoever.
And I also heard that they're the flappier the ear, the more there's the reason that the bloodhounds or the flappy dogs with flappy ears, they use that to pick up scent.
So yeah, when you'll see this with Molly too, she's actually got quite a tight mouth for a pointer, I find.
Right, they have a very flappy mouth.
So the jowls and the ears and the folds, so the ears rustle up the smell like as they're on the ground. Like imagine my hair is like on the ground, and your nose is stuck right in there, and when they sniff, you can see the lips moving and the ears moving, and it's just rustling up more scent for them. So it's a tool that the dogs have to help them with that as well.
Yeah, I thought they just looked cute with the flappy ears. Turns out it's
They are. If you've ever seen a well-bred black and tan coonhound puppy, oh my, biggest paws, the longest flappy ears.
Yeah.
I think the black and tan is actually a dog I would probably use in future for finding bees and things like that.
Sorry, what was the black and tan?
Black and tan coonhound, yeah.
Black and tan.
Okay, we won't tell Molly about this, but we do have some pictures of Molly, and these are photographs taken a couple of years ago that we're looking at now, and it looks like you have something on the deck. Actually, we're on this same deck right here that we're broadcasting from today. You've got something in some plastic bags.
Yes, I do. So in the plastic bags, I have the nest material you provided me. From the,
I provided you.
Yeah, those were the ones you provided from your study, actually.
Those were provided by the Bumblebees.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't make that big of a mess. These were pretty nasty. They were from expired bumblebee nests. This was in October, and during the summer, I had been running several hundred bumblebee nests, and I did have some that had been colonized by the bumblebees, and then I turned that over to you so you could.
Mm-hmm. So what I was doing was I was training Molly to find these nest materials. So what I would do is I would place them in a capsule and I would put them out. And so basically when you're training a dog, you want to start with reward. So you have them, like in this case, you have them smell it and I would reward. Smell it, reward. So they're associating the smell with a huge reward. Molly's reward happens to be fetching a ball. Actually, she's not a big food reward dog. So you start with that. And then you do...
How did you figure out that Molly preferred playing a game over getting a treat?
Oh, man. So she was developed from a line of hunting dogs that was used in a trial called NSTRA, Nistra, in the United States. So she was... I kind of figured she was going to be driven, but she was way more driven than I could have ever imagined. So the point of
When you say driven, you mean like high energy.
Driven means they want to complete tasks. So they want to work. That's all they want to do is work. So in her line, she had this Nistra thing, and basically the object was to find as many birds, shoot, retrieve in 20 minutes at a time. So I already knew her nose was going to be good. I didn't fully grasp what Nistra meant. So when I was outside and trying to train her, I found that if I tried to offer her a treat, she'd be like, no. She was looking for something to do instead. So I would throw a ball, and that was her reward. Her reward was completing tasks. And that's not something you can train into a dog. It has to be born.
Or a person either. Like I would love to have employees that, when they've done a really good job and worked really hard, They come to me and say, I want something more. I want to do another job. I want another job.
That's me.
It is, huh?
me
Good for
and
you.
Molly
That's
share
great.
a lot of
That's really-
traits. And
So
Okay.
shoot and retrieve birds is allowed in Alberta.
oh yes.
Okay, that's allowed. Okay, but not big game or other game. Just
I can't remember. I haven't looked into it in a long time. I thought they removed. I thought they said you couldn't hunt big game with hounds anymore, but then they said you can. I don't know. They changed the
Yeah.
rules. With
I didn't mean
whoever's
to
in-
just get. It was, but,
Yeah.
but birds is allowed. Shoot and retrieve birds.
Yeah. So what we do here in Alberta is they release. So our game, what you call our game department, releases pheasants
Oh.
and things like that.
Oh,
and people
really?
breed these quail and different things.
That's where
Chucker.
they come from.
They call them. Yeah, so pheasant aren't actually native to Alberta. They're Asian, actually. And they were introduced to Europe.
The
and-
ring-necked.
Yeah, the ring-necked, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They were introduced
But
to
we do
Europe.
have other
and
pheasants, don't we? Don't we
Yeah.
have some pheasants here that are
We
native?
used to.
Oh, okay.
We do have...
We ate them all.
Pretty
They
much.
are delicious.
We do have some, like we have the sage grouse, alpine
Right.
grouse, things like that.
And
But most of our prairie birds have, unfortunately, due to farming, habitat loss, and hunting, have largely disappeared.
okay.
Okay, so back to the Molly.
Yeah, so training Molly was actually really easy. I went to Hyperhounds with her, and they have a scent detection class. I kind of understood the principle, but I never been around, like, competition scent detection. And so this what this class taught me was how to train the dog with rewards to react to scent and find the scent. And actually Molly, her first class there, she was there only one time. But it was the first time we were there. She found everything right away, and she just flabbergasted everybody.
Wow.
Because the idea is what they give you is in this case it was essential oil, I believe it was cedar or something like that. And the dog, as soon as the dog reacts to the strange scent, and usually they'll just kind of hover with their nose on there and things like that, you reward. Oh, you noticed that strange scent. So what I did after I finished the class was I just swapped that idea with bumblebee nests. And when she noticed it, I'd put them all over my house. And if I noticed that she was showing interest in it, I'd give her a reward and things like that. And then we moved that to outside, and it worked really, really well. But we got to a point where I needed live bumblebee nests, because what I realized, here's what with the thing with the dog nose, is they can differentiate between a spent nest and a live one.
Oh.
So what I had inadvertently done was trying to find spent nests.
Right.
So
right.
I needed to flag off a bunch of bumblebee nests that were active,
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually super impossible to do. I would ask, people around, I would say, hey, if you're working field and you notice bees, just flag them off for me, please. And I'll, So what I ended up doing was I would take just any bees that had passed on, and I used those. And she could detect. I did a presentation at the AGM for the Alberta Native Bee Council, and I hid, it was just one bee in each of these capsules with just a couple holes, and I hid one in compost, which is rich in distracting scents, just rich. I hid one near a tree, and it was snowing too, or it had snowed, and it was very damp. She found them all right away.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would love to translate that into live bees, and I know it's possible, but getting that space to do it
Yes.
has proven
See,
near.
that's something that surprises me. I didn't realize that would be the defining problem or issue when you're training. I thought, you've got to keep repeating it, and they've got to build up their memory and so on. But it is also having the right samples.
Exactly. Yeah.
And speaking of that, we also want to talk briefly about your work with not just rescuing bumblebees, which is what you originally tried to do.
And
but
I'm still trying.
You're still
I'm
working
just
at?
waiting for that opportunity
You're
of
still working
a
on that.
field with bees.
But you also had something else that you were involved in or starting to learn about,
Yep.
and that's the big problem that beekeepers have, the honey-producing beekeepers, are concerned about a disease called American foulbrood.
Yes.
And the name foul brood means that it smells foul. It smells bad. And
Would this foul smell can be picked up by a human nose?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. But you've got to be within an inch or two. Maybe if it's a really bad case, you could open up the hive and you might kind of smell it. But if you have a creature that can smell with 60 times as many scent receptors in its big nose, then
30 million scent receptors, yeah.
yeah, instead of what do we have? 5 million, 6 million.
5 million, yeah.
So if you have that sort of a situation, you could try to train a dog to approach colonies of honeybees and smell, find those colonies that are infected with American foulbrood.
And it's a rotting smell, like foul, like what? Like foul
Yeah.
isn't like a dead body, kind of.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard people describe it as really old, moldy gym equipment. I heard one presenter mention that at one of the things I went to.
Yeah.
I could smell it from... I have an amazing sense of smell,
Yeah.
so I could smell it immediately. I would still have to open the hive, I think, or it'd have to be a really still day, but the dog would detect it in time so that it wouldn't be spreading to other hives. So that's the difference between... so they have humans who come by and I think they swab it, or they just look at it and take samples and run their tests and everything. That takes time. If you have a well-trained dog with, who knows pretty much exactly what it smells like, even the most tiniest amount, you could run a field of 100 hives in a night, probably, and that's a conservative estimate, and pinpoint. The idea was that she would pinpoint these diseased hives. I would put a sticker on it.
Yes.
And then that way, those hives would be removed or just disposed of right away instead of waiting for tests and different things like that. And just the volume that could be accomplished. If I have a kennel of 6 dogs and I have 6 employees or something like that, that's the whole province of Alberta covered.
Right.
For almost in no time. I wouldn't even need that many dogs or staff, honestly.
Well, we do have 300,000 colonies of bees in Alberta. So that's a lot of
That
bees,
is
a lot
a
of
lot.
colonies. Those individual colonies, 300,000 of them. But I see a really great niche, a big need, an opportunity for someone like you to train dogs and be hired by, say, the apiary inspectors or by beekeepers.
Yeah.
If I had 10,000 colonies of bees, and there are several people who do inside the province of Alberta or in other parts of Canada, I could call you up. You would, I'd say, okay, these are maps of where my apiaries are or the GPS locations. Go to them, please, and put your sticker on every hive that smells suspicious. That would be such a huge service because we could have diseases in our hives and we're so busy harvesting honey, putting boxes on, moving colonies out of pollination or whatever we're doing that we don't always dig down into the brood chamber and look and see, whether or not there is any disease.
Yeah, because those boxes are heavy. Once you're starting to put on,
Yes.
you don't want to lift those off.
Yeah, so they actually
until it's
have
ready to harvest.
I saw a job once, and it was listed online. I can't remember what company had it, but basically you'd be lifting these a full the full frame of honey is heavy.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. You just
Heavy.
75 pounds, maybe even 100 pounds per box. And that's
Imagine just
unreasonable for any job.
Yeah, imagine
Do
your these stickers. So you just come by with your forklift and remove them instead of having to lift all these boxes and things like that. And it wears people out. Not
Right.
many people want to do that job.
Right.
Right.
No,
So,
that's
and the dog will happily sniff this out. This is what they live for. They want to work. Pointers especially, and one of the hardest working breeds out there.
Yes.
It doesn't take Molly much convincing.
Now you're
to
talking
do
about
anything.
maybe doing this at night. I hadn't even thought of that, but I guess that's a possibility.
when all the
because
bees are there.
when the bees are, well, we don't care if
Yeah,
they're
it doesn't
home or
matter,
not,
yeah.
but we don't want the dog to get stung.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
They will at night. They will come out.
Oh yeah, if you touch the hive, if you bump it, if you poke at it, but if you walk by,
Any
you know,
little light, if you put.
yeah. So how it would probably work is we come in at night. Molly wouldn't even need to interact with the hive directly. She would just sit in front of it,
Okay.
basically.
yeah,
And I've come in to close proximity to hives, and like I said, I can handle them with no problem. Molly, it is not unheard of to put a little protective gear on
Right,
her
actually,
or
that's
anything
actually
like that.
so
She
true.
can still smell through, like this netting here. She can still smell through something like that.
so your dog would be wearing a bee suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, a doggy bee suit.
Oh,
It would be
That
the
sounds
most
great.
adorable thing ever.
That actually, then there you go. Yeah, that would never be noticed.
And she's
send
so
us a
driven.
picture of Molly
When I
wearing
develop one,
You
yeah.
bet. Okay, so she's so driven, which means
She's
so
she's
willing to
so-
work.
She's so willing to work that she wouldn't even care. I would never want this to happen. She could get stung 100 times and probably still want to work.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
her drive would just, you know,
Happens to the
overcome
best
that.
of
But we don't want the
beekeepers.
dog getting hurt.
No,
So
no.
we just
Absolutely.
wouldn't put her in a position to do that. But if the bees start buzzing around and are like agitated, she would work through that. She has the drive to do that.
And this disease we're talking about, the American foulbrood, it does have a very distinctive and very strong odor. And if it's not controlled, and usually the best control is to actually burn the equipment and destroy it, because it has a residual property called spores that if the equipment is old and gets reused, it will reinfect other equipment, other bees.
For
And
how
ever. Let's just say forever. Longer
Yeah,
than
spores
longer than
can-
you'll live.
right, spores.
Yeah, they will last a long time. So we tend to want to destroy the equipment. It's a bacterial infection that can be controlled by antibiotics, but we use so many antibiotics in producing our foods of all sorts that beekeepers are being instructed to stay away from that. And if you only have 1 or 2 colonies of bees caught early enough by Molly that they can be removed from the apiary and not infect other hives and then destroyed, sadly, but that's to save everything else and to
Right.
keep us from being addicted to the antibiotics. All right, so we have a situation then where I would hope beekeepers would be excited about this. And do you have some work going on with foundations and both with wild bees? You're a member of the Alberta Native Bee Council, and you do some work with them, I think. And you've demonstrated. I've seen you demonstrate 2 different times with Molly, and a very hyper dog.
Yeah.
Very, very active, almost frighteningly so, and very smart. So what are your next steps then? What could you do to bring this project along?
So the wall I run into is basically I don't have the facility or the funding to do my work. So I'm working a full-time job right now, and then I have to try to find time to train the dog. The other thing too is I need fresh samples, because when I got samples, I believe it was last year or the year before, when I tried to store them for use, they would rot and mold right away. So it was really hard to keep having a fresh sample. Even the ones I kept in the freezer, I mean, then you're denaturing the scent and things like that. So I would need like a dry ice freezer type of thing, something that would not affect the scent too much, and things like that.
Would it be inhumane to infect a yard with American foulbrood just so you could?
Yes, that would be inhumane. There would be ways around it. So Molly would need to be able to work a yard as well that had foulbrood, or in such a way that I could isolate the disease, but also have Molly be able to detect it because she needs to work in an active yard
So,
to
sorry,
get the experience.
so bees, they they live for 2 months. If you were to simulate a yard where you have 10 or 20 or whatever, however many you're like fake beehives, and then on the day of testing, you add a sample of fresh American foulbrood, and then a cup of bees with a little bit of honey in there, so they hang out in that area, and then this would be a simulated bee yard. So instead of infecting 20, you don't even infect it. You're just bringing in a cup of bees from a very strong colony of bees. It could be multiple different colonies, so it could just be a little sample from each colony.
Yeah, that sounds a bit risky and also expensive. You know, a colony of bees is $400 or $500.
It's like a cup of bees from one.
Yeah, but then you're not really having a real beehive, and so I think one suggestion I would have would be to find some beekeepers to be in communication with, and if they spot the disease, they call you up right away.
Yes,
and say, Rose,
that
I've
would
got
be
something
ideal.
Or our apiary inspection department.
Yes.
If they would be willing to have various bee inspectors, and we have bee inspectors who work around the province, and every time they find a colony of bees with disease, it would be a real active apiary with a real problem beehive that the inspector has identified, so we're not infecting anybody else's equipment. And then they give you a call, and you come rushing out with Molly and lead Molly through the whole apiary.
Yep.
And yeah, that's what you want, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly what would help us a lot. I in your scenario with the empty hive boxes, that would be a step in the process of training, because you want to get her to get used to the distraction of just the boxes.
Yes.
And finding the
That
foul
would be
brood.
like a stage of training. It wouldn't
Yes.
be the whole. Okay.
Yeah.
So this podcast is being listened to by people around the world. Would you be willing to fly to southern France along the ocean coast where there are beekeepers who maybe have disease, and they call you up and you go over and
I absolutely.
They have
you would do that. You would do that.
well, they have European foul brood there, right?
Yeah.
No, they do. We have a European foul brood here too.
Oh, okay.
They also have American foul brood.
They also
there.
have a. Oh.
Yes, the nomenclature is a bit confusing.
Yeah.
The only reason one is called American foul brood and the other is called European foul brood is because that's the continent that they were first identified in.
I see.
So American foul brood was discovered in North America, but there are all indications are that it arrived from Europe.
So they're both a foul brood.
They're both a foul brood,
Oh,
but
okay.
European is not anywhere near as severe in
Oh, I
most
see.
cases as American. American is a sure death sentence
I see.
for untreated for a colony of bees. They will die. European, they could recover. You could requeen. You could break the brood pattern by
Yeah.
caging the queen for a while, or you could it'll respond much more easily to removing the damaged or
I
sick
see.
frames. Yes, go ahead.
So you would fly to Europe.
I absolutely would with my dog.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I would take Molly.
Yeah.
I would absolutely fly to Europe to do that. I think this is so important. I don't think people realize the economic damage something like foul brood does, and
wanna
the
talk about-
heartache.
Do you want to talk about the economic damage?
I don't know exact numbers, but
estimate.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
The issue is too is that we used to, at least, I don't know if they still close the border to that, we used to import a lot of bees from the United States and other provinces, and they tend to have an even bigger issue with American foul brood. So part of my project would be to have the dog inspect those shipments to make sure we're not bringing more in than we already
that
have.
we're not going to worry about right now, because if it's coming outside of the country, the bees won't be carrying the American foul brood because they're not carrying combs, and they won't have the disease in them or on them.
Nukes are not allowed.
Nukes are not allowed to be brought in. Hives of
Okay,
bees are not
that's
allowed
what
to
I
be
thought,
brought in.
yeah.
So you're safe there. But why I mentioned, I mean, Europe would be the ideal, wouldn't it? But anyone who's listening in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, as well as Alberta, hello Alberta, that you would be quite happy to get some training in with your dogs. And
Yes,
get
I
them-
absolutely would. It would have to. I still have bills to pay and things like that, but like I said
Do
before,
you have a foundation or
I did start a business last year. It's called Dogs Find Bees. I haven't set up the
Good name.
how I would
Mhm.
take donations or anything like that, because like this takes a lot. I would want to get an accountant involved and everything like that, because I would want everything to be
Could it
but
be
you
above
do-
board and everything.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Bettina.
was just have you thought about being like a not-for-profit?
That's the goal.
Okay.
That's really the goal.
'Cause you could take a salary, and the company could be losing.
Exactly. If
Yeah.
if I could turn this into just a salaried position, that would be great. My goal really is to get people in general started on this. I want to train other people how to do this. I want to train handlers and dogs how I want to have a foundation that does this, because I'm not going to be healthy forever. I have my own health
Well, you got
issues.
yourself a participant, honestly, because I do want to learn native bee. I want to learn other forms of beekeeping, not just honeybees,
Mm-hmm.
because it's beekeeping, not honey beekeeping.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Keeping them alive.
Well, I don't know what the word really keeping means. I thought it just meant kind of.
I think
But yeah, keeping them alive. Yeah.
I think keeping
Staying alive.
insinuates
Yeah, these
insinuates that
We
you're
own-
a steward of the planet. You have empathy for these creatures that provide so much for us. And with all the studies I've read and things I've read, bees have a very complex inner life.
They do.
And they deserve our stewardship and our protection. And if we can eliminate even a little bit of suffering for them, it's
Yeah.
worth it.
It's worth it.
That's where my
I love your
my
attitude.
my
It's-
motivation is.
Yeah.
I want to protect the economy and people's livelihoods and everything like that. But for me, you could say I'm ahead in the clouds or something like that. But for me, the animals matter. The animals really matter. And if this eliminates even a little suffering, it'll be worth it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, we're drawing towards the end of our time.
I just wanted to kind of add to that.
Yeah.
We're an animal, just like we're a mammal, right?
Mhm.
Humans. And when you look at all these different mammals, they all seem to have a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then we always wonder, well, what do humans have a role in this whole ecosystem? And we're kind of the only ones capable of understanding these concepts of protecting and
Mhm.
stewardship. And I feel like that is kind of our role on.
It should be.
Yeah.
I agree with
Mhm.
you. I
Yeah.
agree. It
We
should
should have the
Absolutely should be.
capabilities to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you
Good.
mention that too. That a group of scientists in the States recently signed on saying that insects actually do have a consciousness and feel. And from what I've read, they experience pain, they experience all sorts of things that we as humans can relate to. And they're discovering more and more, not just with insects, but with animals, all animals, that they do maybe not have what we would consider a human consciousness, but there is a consciousness there. There is suffering. There is joy.
Yes.
Um,
You answered a
things like
dying
that.
question for me and Ron and I we did a whole episode on it. Do bees have consciousness?
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever concluded if they did or not.
Well,
And
we
we just
I
kinda-
think our biggest answer was it depends on how you define it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
right. How
it might
pain-
not be
yeah.
identical to what we feel. We have a more complicated and a different sort of a brain.
Yeah.
But it would be hard to deny that even insects don't feel pain. They do.
Right. Sorry. Do
Mhm.
bees
They
feel
absolutely
pain,
do. Yes.
not
Yep.
that conscious?
they do
yeah.
have
Yeah.
pain receptors.
Yeah.
It's not what we
Yes.
um,
It's not
would
exact-
relate to as a human
Yeah.
necessarily, but I've watched a bee die from pesticides. It's a long, horrifying death. They writhe, they suffer, their tongues stick out.
They're suffocating.
They're suffering. So what happens,
Yeah.
I think it's neocotinoids or something like that. I can't remember.
Neonicotinoids
those.
are a problem, yes.
So it causes a neurological thing where they can't bring their tongue back in. I can't remember exactly why. I think it swells too much, or there's a coating that develops on it or something, and they basically suffer and die slowly.
Yeah, we are tasked with being stewards, and we're not quite achieving that goal as well as we should.
Well, we
not at
like
all.
to cherry pick, right? We like to cherry pick what we
Find
like.
the things.
Be-
Yep.
Well, because we really regard, like, not to kind of just like dogs, right? Like, we really regard dogs as a high regard in North America and Western culture. But then if you go to East culture, they regard cows and other forms of than dogs. And when you ask them the question, well, why do you think that? Well, they say dogs don't provide anything. A cow will provide milk. It will plow for you. It will do all sorts of things that a dog cannot. So a cow is actually way more valuable than a dog if you were to do this hierarchy of things.
Well,
Well, no,
okay,
but-
that's one
But it just
way of looking at
well,
it.
I'm just saying we like to
Yeah.
cherry pick what we like to take care of,
We do,
and we
yeah.
really should be taking care of everything. Like, they're all very important. Like, a dog has 300 million smell receptor.
receptors, yeah.
Cow does not. A cow
Uh-huh.
cannot.
I think it would be more accurate to say that different cultures just have different relationships.
Right.
A lot of Eastern cultures find dogs extremely useful. They
Yeah.
just don't have the same relationship as we would have here. It's more of a colleague work relationship, whereas cows are sacred. So that's even something even different. I mean, Egyptian culture, cats are sacred.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
and I
particularly
think-
because of the utility of the cow in India.
Well,
or-
no, sorry, I meant China. This was in China I'm talking about.
Okay.
So they think they regard the utility of an animal is regarded as much more honorable, or something.
I don't know. I'm not one to make any comment on that.
I don't know, but this is. I
But
was just
again,
saying we like to cherry
yes.
pick, and we shouldn't be.
We do.
So
Yeah.
you bring up an interesting point. So there's the thing called the cute factor. So typically,
Yeah.
the cuter an animal
Right.
is, the less likely we as humans want to harm it. The uglier
Bears,
creature
yeah.
is. This is kind of why bumblebees are kind of in the forefront of people's minds right now too. People are realizing these flying fuzzy creatures are absolutely adorable.
Yeah,
Which good for the bumblebees, but a grasshopper, say, isn't going to get as
No.
much attention, or even wasps. I mean, wasps are as cute, but they provide plenty of benefit to nature. But people are just like, well, we need to get rid of the wasps. We need to get rid of the wasps.
Yeah.
So I think there's just this kind of innate thing in humans where the more we can relate to something, and for us it's something cute, the more likely we are to bond with it and take it on as something we need to save. I mean, I don't think anyone's trying to save like the worms at the bottom of the ocean or anything like that so much. We are trying to save the oceans, at least some
Right.
of us.
Yeah.
But when it comes to creatures, I don't know of any millipede rescues.
Yeah, I
so.
don't think anybody's ever tried to rescue an
True.
extinct bacteria or a.
No, they're trying to bring those back. Don't worry.
Yeah, that might be inadvertent. So we are wrapping up, and I wanted to give you an opportunity, Rose, if there's anything we didn't talk about or anything you'd like to say that we should, because you have such an interesting, diverse background. You're doing so much really good work, and you're developing a really nice project. I'm hoping that people are paying attention and will come out and want to join you. But how can we wrap this up, and what can you say that we haven't covered?
I guess my closing statement, as it were, would be that we have this incredible resource in dogs. We've developed this creature that has the structures and brain power to do this thing for us that we need. We need these dogs to do more for us. We wouldn't be just saving ourselves. We'd be saving the dogs sitting in shelters right now. I don't need a German Shorthaired Pointer to do this work for me. There are plenty of driven, hardworking animals waiting for a home and a job.
Huh.
And it's a resource I find severely lacking in Alberta. We do have the mussel sniffing dogs that we use for boats and things like that, but we really haven't expanded further than that. And it takes investment. It takes investment from our leaders. It takes investment from people being interested. It takes investment from our business owners. But it is a worthwhile thing to develop, and I hope by the time I'm long gone that this is still a thing we're doing. Not only are we going to save the environment, when we save the environment, we save ourselves. When we save the environment, we save our businesses, we save our income, and it's just really something that needs to be known out there. And I feel Alberta is a perfect place for this to take off and spread around the world.
Is there any links or anybody in particular that you would like to shout out? Any organizations or events that you have upcoming?
Yeah, for sure. So I have my website for Bumblebee relocation, and it's also going to be my website for the honeybee detection as well. It's www.dogsfindbees.ca. There's a wonderful program with the David Suzuki Foundation, which I'm peripherally a member of. So I'm technically a butterfly way ranger, but what I'm working more towards is actually relocating and saving the bumblebees. So the Butterfly Way Foundation, actually, they create these pollinator gardens and pollinator pathways and everything like that. And these rangers go out and do education and things like that. They're trying to get in schools. I think it's important that our education system includes these things about stewarding our environment. I think the David Suzuki Foundation Butterfly Way Project is really trying to do that. I also have my Facebook page, Dogs Find Bees on Facebook, and I'm always looking for people interested in the honeybee detection, disease detection side, as well as the bumblebees. And then Alberta Native Bee Council does wonderful work. I've been a member. I didn't renew my membership this year because I just did a big move. I'm trying to get everything back on track. So that's something. But I do communicate with them sometimes. They're very busy with research and things on what bumblebees like and things like that. The University of Calgary is doing wonderful work with their Bee City program. And they're also they use iNaturalist to document what these wild bees are pollinating and what their food sources they like. So they want all they want is pictures of bumblebees on flowers and honeybees, any bee, sweat bees, miner bees, andrena, anything like that. So there's that program as well. So if you download the iNaturalist app, you can get that. There's Ron here does wonderful work for bees. I believe you have several, or we're doing several programs. You were teaching inmates how to be beekeepers and things like that.
Yeah, that
So
was
More Drumheller?
Yeah, at Drumheller. I've done that for a few years in a row. And the purpose there isn't so much to turn out a group of professional future beekeepers as it is to show opportunities to people who are behind bars, who are in prison, and to help them see ways that they could contribute again. So I think a lot of what we do as beekeepers with training could be and should be directed towards vulnerable populations.
Yes.
And trying to help people get their lives together and actually get a lot of enjoyment out of being out in nature.
People with a purpose are less likely to reoffend. They have dog training programs in the United States where inmates train rescue dogs and they get adopted to wonderful homes.
Yes.
And these guys often become dog trainers themselves when they finish and are way less likely to reoffend. And that's a resource I would like to tap into as well if this takes off, and I do eventually get a kennel set up and everything like that.
Well, we sure hope that all of this comes to fruition, and we're here to support you and help you.
Thank you.
We will put links and
Thank you
information
very
on
much.
our YouTube channel and also on our podcast so that when people download the podcast or watch and I hope that they do watch, there are so many avenues that potentially could lead you along. So I'm really hopeful for that. And yeah, do you want to take us out? Do you want to take us home?
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Rose, for coming on today. We got the sun out. The bees are buzzing in the background. I think they're telling us to get off the back porch.
No, you would know. It's a different pitch in the buzz when they're mad.
That's right.
But yeah, we're actually in Ron's backyard right now, and the bees are just behind us. And yeah, it's been a very wonderful episode. And thank you.
Yes, thanks for listening in. We'll be back again.
Thank you both for having me.
Oh, thank you, Rose. It's really nice to see you again. So thanks, folks. And we will be back again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.